ability, defensive tactics, but also, mindset and nutrition. Those are absolutely things that interplay, injury prevention, functional fitness. So, before I keep going on and on and on about all the things that my guests could speak probably for hours and hours about, we're just going to do this crash course. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Audrey Andrade. She was been on the show before. So, episode 39, that's 39. Avoiding dogma was really like a huge theme from our past naval officer, our veterans. Thank you, Audrey. Can you please give us a little introduction about who you are, what you've done, and what you're doing now?
Hey, Audrey Andrade, Instagram known as Wellness Audrey. I focus on staying consistent, specifically focusing on burnt out millennials as a burnt out millennial myself, or at least I used to be. I'm a personal trainer and functional nutrition coach, and I help millennials and people like yourself get more consistent with a healthier lifestyle, focusing on staying active and healthier nutrition choices and life choices in general. So thank you. A little
Awesome,
sick. Sorry
awesome.
about that. Sorry about my voice.
Oh, you were fantastic. So, next up, we have Taylor Huntman. Taylor also having a background in fitness and nutrition. So, Taylor, can you please give us a little intro?
So, hi, I'm Taylor Huntman. I am a certified personal trainer as well as a sports nutrition coach, clearly accompanied by my very boisterous Rottweiler, my best buddy. But I've
fierce.
been in the fitness space for quite some time, to going on just about 10 years. And through my experiences in marketing, as well as tying in personal training, group fitness, things like that, I had the very unique pleasure of working with a tactical team here locally in Montana. And for a brief period of time, I was training them to increase their PFQ scores. So if you're a listener and you don't know what the PFQ is, it is your physical fitness qualifications for tactical teams. And so our goal within that team was not only to use fitness to increase their mental health wellness, but to also help them increase their scores and their preparedness as a team. Currently, I train clients from a very diverse scope. I train as young as 15-year-old athletes who are in volleyball, football, soccer, all the way up to 65-plus-year-old men and women who are just looking to increase muscle density, bone density. I use a modality of fitness techniques, and then we also talk through nutrition, recovery, and we just really kind of approach it from an all-encompassing approach, from your mental health wellness, how you slept that night, what we can do for injury prevention, what we can do to kind of rehab some old injuries. And, we set goals in terms of strength, recovery, movements we want to do, how we want to move for the rest of our life. For my young athletes, we focus on maybe increasing a vertical or performing better throughout the course of a game. So just kind of happy to join in on this big, broad conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Evan Kapler. Doctor, thanks for coming on the show. And can you tell us a little bit about what kind of doctoring it is you do and about your social media?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. So I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I'm a physical therapist by trade. I've been working with jiu-jitsu athletes for a long time now. That's sort of the area that I focused in on. I do, as Eric mentioned, I use social media. I post lots of things that someone can use on a spot off occasion. But ultimately, what I do is I build programs for people who are training jiu-jitsu to address injuries, address things that are most oftentimes haven't been addressed for many years. And then also build capacity, build strength, and build, longevity and promote, the ability to be able to do these things, whether it's jujitsu or whatever it is, for a long period of time.
Yeah, awesome. So, in talking with these different we'll call them health experts for today, I recognize, and we were talking a little bit before the recording started, but we could go all kinds of different roads, right? We talk about injury prevention. We could talk about like movement itself the whole time. Clearly there's some experience with nutrition. Dr. Evan being a jiu-jitsu practitioner, like athletes have to mind their nutrition. Audrey, shout out, you just won your competition, BJJ competition. So there is that like tie in to actual like the necessity to mind like what you're bringing in, and for first responders that can be such a challenge. So although I do want to spend a lot of time talking about fitness, maybe we'll just start with like nutrition. Like, what are we putting in our bodies And anyone that wants to kick it off, I'm like, for the beginner, and I have my own, my opinions that I've spoken or written about, but like for the beginner where it's just so daunting, there's so much freaking information out there, what to eat, what not to eat, this prescription, this, you know, do I eat plants? Do I eat animals? Do I eat none of it? Do I eat this like powder stuff? Who wants to start?
I can kick that off. So, in the experience I had working with the team locally, we did talk about nutrition, and it was pretty eye-opening for them to admit, like, yeah, sometimes we just don't eat. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, so how's that going to go when you need to, hop out of the car and go pursue a criminal? Are you going to be able to withstand that? And so we really focused on, food availability. Living where I live here in Montana, we don't have a Trader Joe's, we don't have a Whole Foods.
Oh
For most of
no.
the people, yeah, I know it's really sad. It's a tough life here in Montana, but we don't have, some of those resources available to food. So we really just kind of focus on what protein is best available to you. So where we lack Trader Joe's, we have white-tailed deer, mule deer, elk. A lot of people do farming, or they invest in local protein sources: chicken, eggs, beef. They go out and they hunt. So we more or less focus on how can we use protein as a building block. And I think with that intention in mind, it makes it a lot more approachable to not get sucked down that bunny hole of, well, what do I eat? Just kind of start with protein: Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. Keep jerky and some protein bars in your vehicle with you. Just kind of have those snacks that keep you fueled, keep you going. And then, if they ask deeper questions, we'll tap into, like, well, what's a good protein bar? But for the most part, it's more or less, fueling and putting nutrients into your body that are going to support your job. If you're not a first responder, I'm still a big component of protein first. Use that as your building block, and then the rest of your nutrition falls in around that.
Yeah, I love that. Audrey,
Yeah,
looks like you
I'm
got
with
something.
that on Taylor. Just with my own clients, I always tell them prioritize protein, fat, fiber, 100%, because most of my clients have had carbs demonized most of their lives, going through the Atkins phase, and then keto, and then ketotarian, all of these movements that have made carbs the bad guy. And the crummy part about that is, um, if you even remotely are active, you need carbs. And if you're depleting yourselves of carbs, how are you going to perform on the mat? How are you going to perform at your job? It's actually really difficult to stay focused because your brain uses all of those sugars, the glucose, to be able to focus. So yes, I always say protein is that foundation, right? Because your body uses those amino acids, but it's not demonizing any macronutrient as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's money. Dr. Evan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I love where we're going with this on some of the stuff that Taylor and Audrey talked about, but I think too it's interesting. And again, nutrition is not necessarily my formal education, but I think when you look at some of these trending diets that you see, right, you can pull up Instagram and you can start to see, like, oh, this guy's doing carnivore and this guy's doing paleo, this guy's doing keto. I think at the end of the day, they're all kind of cutting out the same stuff, right? They're
Hmm.
cutting out the processed foods, right? They're trying to eat real foods. They're trying to eat, things that are going to make them feel good, right? And I think for a lot of people, like, if you can just cut those things out, I mean, that's the first step. It makes such a big difference. I would say when you pick up like a given food item, right? And an apple, you know what an apple is, that's real, right? But if you pick up something that has a nutrition label on the back, if you don't know what any of those items are, I
You
just
can't
think,
even
like,
read them. Yeah.
right, like, what is probably not a good pick, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just very basic stuff, real foods, whole foods, things like that, I think are super important.
Yeah, I love that. And just the simplicity of like protein, just thinking about that main macro, like a lot of processed food is devoid of that, right? And like the most hyper palatable foods, you might call them, right? Like the things that just like, you just know that they're sticking to you in the bad ways, right? It's just like sugar and fat, and like it's usually not good. It's not like, we'll get into like natural sources of fat, or maybe we won't, but maybe I'll just take a nod to that, right? It's just like basically like Crisco vegetable oil, right? Like this super processed stuff. So I love that, right? That's the notion of staying on the outside of the grocery store, things that need to be refrigerated or, before too long. You can't keep apples, in your warm car for too long, like, because they come from nature, and that's going to be a bad day. So I appreciate that. And so that's a great place to start, right? Think about just natural foods that you understand that they are from nature. We are from nature. Like, let's look at it that way. To go on to the next step, maybe I'll stay with you, Dr. Evan, because you do work so much with people that are injured and people that want to optimize. And so there's obvious carryovers to first responders. I can literally count on two hands a host of guys that I'm working with that are injured, right? They're sidelined. They may or may not have surgery upcoming. And I always have my own perceptions and opinions of recommendations for people that are on the mend. Any thoughts on that?
In terms of the nutrition side of things, just in terms of everything all together.
Yeah, like things that they should consider, like as far as like what I mean, I guess like my teaser, my like what I'm trying to get at is maybe like for muscle repair and like ligament repair and like what makes sense in those contexts.
You don't
Yeah.
just rub Tiger Balm and everything?
Yeah, I mean it just burns so
I would
good.
home and BioFreeze.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I have a couple of things on that, but I think, the thing that I always come back to is like, I see a lot of people that, have a given issue, right? Say it's back pain, knee pain, whatever it is. And then it's a very specific problem. I mean, a lot of these people have gone to a doctor. They have an MRI, which, it tells you exactly what's going on for what it's worth. And then there's a very general approach that they're taking on, right? They're trying to stretch more, like a big one is like people will take on yoga, right? I'm going to add yoga into my routine, right? And like my whole thing is like, if I was injured, I would want to be as efficient and effective as possible about handling that issue, right? So if I could dial in, like, okay, there's 7 to 10 exercises that are the best possible inputs I can be putting into my body for that tendon, ligament, etc. to repair, that's what I want to focus in on. So I think just getting specific about that and dialing that in, that's sort of the approach that I come at with it. And honestly, I think both of these guys would probably speak better to nutrition and healing and that sort of thing. But I think like just dialing in the exercises, I think that's a huge gap that I see a lot of times that can be done a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's a perfect nod to like where we'll get next is in the things shared so far. What I'm hearing is just like knowing your tools and like applying the correct tool, right? Like a tool could be like focusing on protein. A tool could be focusing on adding something healthy, right? Like talk about the example of an apple. Like, okay, cool. But also removing things, right? Like by adding natural foods, we are by, in essence, removing these unnatural foods or these components that we don't really want. And then kind of what you're saying, Doc, was like, we think about the specific exercises to focus on, then we're not just like arbitrarily adding something like yoga. Yoga could be great. It could also be terrible. It could be exactly what you do or don't need, right?
Right.
So I guess to pivot back and maybe we'll start kind of closing the loop on nutrition. Taylor or Audrey, do you want to offer anything as far as like kind of maybe the next level if listeners want to look at it like that way?
Yeah, so I love that, Doc brings up like you have to do the things. And that's one thing I tell all of my clients. You have to do the homework. So if you are in physical therapy, if you are going to your chiropractor, if you have a team of health professionals that are working towards a common goal, one, you need to loop all of them in together. So if your chiropractor communicates something with you, something we need to avoid, something we need to improve on, tell me. If your massage therapist says, hey, you're pretty weak in this muscle, tell me. We will work on that. But we also kind of talk about like we'll tap on the nutrition just a little bit because again, it can be so overwhelming. Having the world at our fingertips is a double-edged sword in that sense. So I just, we really talk about eat those highly uninflammatory foods. So, stay away from seed oils, try to avoid sugars, eat healthy proteins, eat good fats. If you're somebody who likes supplementation, I talk about like tart cherry juice, turmeric, curcumin. Make sure you're up on your fish oils, your glucosamine chondronate. I'm saying that wrong. I know I am, but we talk about supplementation and then, just eating the healthy foods, kind of circling back to that whole, like as minimally processed as possible, decrease the inflammatogens in your body. And that gives your body the opportunity to heal and, do your homework in that sense. So do the physical therapy, do the things your chiropractor is telling you. If you're somebody who likes to run and we've talked about your running and I say, do 20 squats and 20 glute bridges before you go run to fire your glutes, do it. Otherwise, nothing changes if nothing changes.
Good point. Well said. Audrey, any thoughts there?
Honestly, in regards to nutrition, I would say before you start taking out, like consider adding because tape removing could be so restrictive and you could definitely get into a very tough mental space that way. And so I would say a gentle approach is to keep adding before you even consider removing anything at all. Um, so consider adding more protein before you start decreasing calories. Consider starting to like add in the tracking of your food before you start removing all of the processed food in your diet. So it's like, so instead of continually subtracting from your life, like think of what can you gain from this new lifestyle that you're implementing, right? So it's not a take away, take away, take away. Like you are adding to your life. So if you shift your mindset that way, it's certainly more easy to approach that lifestyle change.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I feel like that restriction is very real. And then for a lot of the first responder types, like if you're already listening to this, then you're definitely more niche than just general first responders. But a lot of us are pretty hard chargers, pretty driven in whatever the thing we do. We go full bore. It's like all or nothing. It's a light switch, not a dimmer. So I've felt it personally. I still contend with that where, hey, keto, that sounds really promising, not just because of like, balancing your energy levels, but then not needing food. Oh, so you can fast. I can intermittent fast with keto, and it's like a super thing. And then like this cognitive,
Yeah.
like boost. And so I did all that, right? But like this is twofold. One is that know like what it is you're doing, and then look at like the whole context. And the whole context is like to look at like the BJJ practitioners here, right? Like you just generally need to use toggle like explosive energy and non-explosive energy. That like carbs are very useful, right? And then for me to be a first responder handling a dog and then running a couple miles on no food, yeah, my body got acclimated to it. Was it optimal? Looking back, for me, certainly not. And looking back for me, taking my hormones in a in a very real way, like certainly not, right? So I did have this element, that I listened to so many anecdotes of like, hey, you just got to drive through, and it'll get better. And I'm like, well, okay, like I can do stuff. I'm no quitter. But like really like mind the whole thing and like what you're doing, what your main goal is, and then tear it down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well said.
Oh, no, I was gonna say it's interesting. I feel like you just touched on something that I think is interesting, but I feel like a lot of times the first step into like working on health, nutrition, whatever it is like you catch on to one of those trends, right? You catch on to like I'm gonna do keto and I'm gonna add in fasting, right? And then I think most people at a certain point kind of go a little overboard, and then they scale it back and they say like, okay, what are the principles that were important there, right? And that's sort of where you kind of end up with it. I don't know if that's a shared experience here in the group, but I feel like I definitely had that same experience as you just kind of
Yeah.
explained.
Yeah, this
Absolutely.
detrimental all or nothing mindset. It's
Yeah.
like we got to get rid of it. Like this, we have to understand like it's okay to do something in moderation. It doesn't have to be, oh, if I can't walk, do a 4 mile walk this morning, I'm not going to walk at all. Like no, it's okay to do a half-mile walk with your cute little dog in your bed. That was there. It's it's like no, like you don't have to just do go totally hard and then or just sit on the couch and do nothing. Like it's okay to be comfortable in the in between.
Yeah, and to like circle back to something that both Audrey and Doc brought up is, people are really into like these trending diets right now. And I mean, Audrey, I'm sure you can count too. It's probably one of the first questions people ask you. Like, you go to a party, people know you're a personal trainer. Like, what do you think of the carnivore diet? And I mean,
Yeah.
I'll reiterate the same thing each and every time somebody asks, carnivore, paleo, Whole30, keto. You know, it's a great tool to start with. Like if you are kind of new to getting a diet figured out, that is a great tool to start with. But to circle back to Audrey's point, like that full on restriction and, removing everything you've eaten for years and years and years, and then being like, all right, I'm full bore keto and intermittent fasting, that can hurt your body just as much as it can feel good in the moment. And, Eric, you've experienced that too. Like, yeah, it's great for a little while, and then your body like tanks out on it because we don't have that balance and that symbiotic relationship of food to our body to our performance.
Yeah, and I think that all these things can be so helpful for different reasons, right? I do think I built a strong mindset from doing intermittent fasting, and I learned a lot about what my body's capable of. I certainly learned that, like, it's not a deal breaker if I skip a meal. Like, that's very empowering. But at the same time, it can breed so many neuroses and this additional stress. Um, and same thing for like fitness, right? So I'll give a little anecdotal story, for that full like all or nothing, and that's jumping into BJJ not super long ago, where I felt I'm not doing it right now, and so for those of you that are like, "Ugh, quitter, whatever," right? But I realized it wasn't serving me in the ways I had sought it to serve me, right? Like I've reflected a lot about it, but I was going like I wanted to go 2 to 4 times a week because if I feel like I was slipping too much. Like I wasn't building the momentum I wanted. And then I was getting hurt a lot. And then I was not taking the appropriate time away in my, late 30s to get back in rolling with like young 20-year-olds. And so ultimately with everything that I was working on, I was like, okay, this is going to take a back seat because it's creating more stress for me at this moment than what I intended it to be, which was I intended it to be a fun stress reducer. But for me in that stage of life, not the best fit, right? So we got to mind everything and know what our goals are. And then I guess we'll go to fitness, right? So um, I know that it's so hard, especially, kind of Taylor said, like, kind of nodded at this, right? Where you meet somebody or someone's just like, hey, what's the best thing for this? So in some ways, I'm asking you to speak to like this completely amorphous audience of like, hey, what are some things you should do or start with? So for those that are just completely like gym is intimidating and movements and all this stuff, all this noise like CrossFit, cardio, yoga, hot yoga, uh, TRX, like what should I get? Like how do I start? Like there's a million types of squats. Like I don't even know what to do. Like let's start vague and what your main tips may be for someone that's entering that space or they're re-entering that space, because it could be just as daunting for those that grew up playing sports and they felt so confident and now they're like, yeah, like life, career, kids, and they're like, I just want to not hurt. I just want to not hurt getting out of bed.
So, as a fitness class queen, I am always pro fitness class. And like, if you're just getting back into it, it is such a perfect way to go be social, but also find a way to be more consistent with it. Like, it may be, you may feel cheesy going at first, but you start to build community. Like my husband, I'm greatly grateful, is a strength and conditioning coach at our jiu-jitsu gym, and um, and I go to his strength and conditioning classes, and I made quite a few friends there, and it's awesome. So, um, but whenever we move and go to a new gym, I'm probably going to find a new gym and go to fitness classes there, meet new people, find new ways to be consistent. But even if I, didn't have a fitness regimen, that's what I would recommend to someone, because it gets you there, right? Because you don't have to even think about it. You don't have to think about programming. You don't have to think about talking to your neighbor because you're focused on the workout. So it's social, quote unquote, without you actually having to be that social.
Yeah, that's a cool thing, right? You're just injected in this community, and pretty quickly after the 6 weeks or whatever, 5 sessions, whatever you sign up for, you'll probably have a sense of like, I like this or I don't like this, or maybe what do I like about this, right? Do I like the environment? Do I like the pace? Or is that what I don't like? I like to do my own self-guided thing, and so that could be very informative.
Absolutely.
I think, moving on, I like that you bring up like the self-guided thing. I actually started my fitness career being a Zumba instructor. I'll throw myself under the bus. I taught Zumba. That was how I started, and
It looks
it's still
hard. I'm gonna say I've never done it. It
It's
looks
so
really hard.
fun.
those ladies party, all right? They have a time when they're in there, and gentlemen every now and then. But I think there's a lot of people who just kind of like to go into the gym. I myself am one of those people. I plug in, the world's off, my music is on, and I'm just kind of focused in on me. And so to kind of expand to almost a more intermediate person, if you're going to a commercial gym that has equipment and machines, I kind of like to tell people pick 3 lower body machines, 3 upper body machines, and do 15 minutes of cardio. And that's a pretty good workout. So do sets of like 10 to 15 or sets of 10 to 15 reps. Do like 3 sets at each piece of equipment. Challenge yourself a little bit. So maybe make your last set heavier than your first 2 sets. So hit 3 upper body, 3 lower body. If you've got ab machines and you're confident using them and don't have lower back problems or hernias or anything like that, hit one of the ab machines and then hop on a treadmill or an elliptical for 15 minutes. And that gives you a solid 45-minute to 1 hour workout. And, it's just a good building block. You'll slowly get to be more confident with the equipment. You'll figure out how your muscles feel when you're doing stuff. And a lot of equipment is actually translatable to free weights. It's just figuring out, it's tapping into that mind to muscle connection. So that's another thing that I think if you're at that more intermediate level, like start thinking about how you're using your muscles. When you're in that beginner stage, like it's all just so overwhelming. And I love that Audrey brought up go to fitness classes because, yeah, you have somebody telling you what to do, telling you where to move, where to go, how to get there, and you don't really have to think about it. But if you're kind of taking that one step up, you got to start putting your brain in your muscles and, figuring out what machines use my upper body, what machines use my lower body, where can I target my glutes, my biceps, etc. And throw in a little bit of cardio. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just approach it with, I'm doing this for my health, not to, harm myself.
Yeah, I love that. Doc, what you got? Where should people start? Like, what should they think about?
Yeah, man, it's interesting. You guys were kind of going through this, and man, I wish I could remember exactly what it's called so I could cite it and tell you guys about it. But I remember when I was in college, there was a textbook we were looking at, and it had levels of adherence to exercise, right? And level 1 was like, you know it's good to do, right? You know that to be a, healthy, responsible human being, you should go to the gym a couple times a week. So you force yourself to go, right? And those people don't really stick with that routine very long. And then the next level is you start to identify with the thing that you're doing. And to me, that's like, that could be the jujitsu people, that can be the CrossFit people, or the workout people that say like, okay, I work out. This is something that I do. I go and do this, right? And then there's this final tier where you're doing something just for pure enjoyment. Like you just love to do it. Like you could do it all day, and the only reason you would stop is because you have to get back to whatever you're doing. There's no forcing yourself to do it, right? And I think for, if Zumba's your thing, if Zumba's something you could go Zumba all day on a Saturday, like that's a great starting point. Because now you're spending, so much time being physically active. And I think jujitsu is your thing. That's something that you're truly not worried about. Like, I got to get through this class. It's like, oh, wow, class is over. That's such a powerful way to get more physical activity in your life than something that's like, hey, maybe it's not your jam and you're really forcing it. You're not very likely to stick to that.
Yeah, I love what you just said, Doc, and it was what popped into mind, or a version of that with what Taylor said, which is just, hey, just do like 15 minutes of cardio. But like